What's going on, guys? Welcome back to WWE Network and Show, where I, Graham G.S. Matthews, break down all the original content I watch on the WWE Network and on Peacock. And today we're talking the January 24th, 2022 edition of Raw Talk, the go-home show, so to speak, before the Royal Rumble this coming weekend. Obviously, we still have Talking Smack probably on Saturday morning, but this did break down all the latest events and developments from Monday's Raw last night. So, decent show here. Usually we have an analyst or an extra guest alongside Jackie Redmond and Matt Can to review Raw and Talking Smack as well with SmackDown. This week, it's the usual cast of characters, the same familiar faces with Jerry Lawler and Booker T, Peter Rosenberg, JBL. JBL's probably my favorite of those four. Jerry and Booker just don't really add anything at all. I'm not a big Rosenberg guy, but he's decent. I like JBL, but it's like, all right, can we get someone new here and not the same four faces? We got someone new this week in the form of WWE Hall of Famer Shawn Michaels. Two-time WWE Hall of Famer Shawn Michaels, actually. Obviously, with the Royal Rumble coming up this weekend, he is a two-time Royal Rumble winner, so that's why he was probably on the show. He did make the comment, Jackie said, we would love to have you back again or whatever, towards the end, and he said, yeah, I would love to come back, provided I get a nap beforehand. Because they filmed this show live in the studio, I assume, and obviously he wasn't there in the studio. He kind of zoomed in or whatever. But 11 o'clock, I'm sure, is late for Shawn Michaels. He was seen sitting in his NXT office. Hopefully they don't fire him, a lot like they did William Regal and Samoa Joe and everyone else down there in NXT. But yeah, we saw him in his office at NXT, and it was cool. But anyway, so to start the show, Shawn talks about Brock wearing a cowboy hat for the weigh-in between Brock and Bobby at the beginning of Raw last night. And he kind of talks about Brock not taking Bobby seriously and how Brock is being all jovial and laughing and happy because he's comfortable and that he's very dangerous. A very comfortable Brock is a dangerous Brock Lesnar. And Cowboy Brock is also the best Brock Lesnar, if I do say so myself. But he does say a win for Lashley would be huge for Lashley. And Lashley's a guy that takes everything seriously. But he also says for Brock, this is going to be his toughest fight to date. His toughest fight ever, and he's going to have his hands full come Saturday when they collide for the WWE Championship. They also recap Bianca Belair versus Zelina Vega. They tease Bianca potentially winning the Royal Rumble twice, which hasn't happened with back-to-back winners since the 90s, 97 and 98 when Stone Cold won both Rumbles. We've never had it with the women. And even that with Stone Cold was well over 20 years ago, almost 25 years ago. So I think, honestly, if Bianca won it, I would not be upset. I like Bianca a lot. It makes sense. I'm all for it. We hear from Bianca backstage at Raw. She says that she's ready to make history, and everyone's going to be studying her game this year as opposed to her studying everyone else's game because she knows what it's like to win. Why kind of affect that game plan and approach to winning? And she's just going to go into it like she would any other match and reign supreme as she always does. As far as people she's looking out for on the match, she specifically name drops Rhea Ripley and Liv Morgan as people that she's kind of keeping her eye on the match. Back in the studio, they recap the great match between AJ Styles and Austin Theory. Got a ton of time, AJ winning clean, without Theory look really good in defeat. Great match there. Matt Camp points out that Randy Orton, Sheamus, and Rey Mysterio, who have all officially declared for the Royal Rumble, are the only three former Rumble winners in the match this year. Orton would be winning his third, Sheamus would be winning his second, 10 years removed from his first Rumble win, which we actually spoke about in our interview on Monday. More on that at the end here. And Rey Mysterio would be winning his second as well after winning it originally in 2006. They then recap the Mysterios versus the Street Profits, another very good match that was won by the Mysterios this time. We hear from the Mysterios backstage. Rey recalls throwing out Dominic of the ring at the end of Raw and kind of joking about that and how it's going to have to go Dominic's way on Sunday if he has any intentions of winning the Royal Rumble. And he says that Dominic's going to need eyes in the back of his head. Shawn Michaels says that experience, goes a long way. It's a big advantage when it comes to these Royal Rumble matches. And it's all about duration, pacing yourself, maintaining that longevity in the matchup in order to win the whole thing, especially if you have an early number. For this year, for the men, he calls it a wide open field. There really isn't one or two people that he thinks could win the whole thing. My current pick is Brock Lesnar, but we know Brock hasn't been declared yet, so they can't say that. I think Brock loses to Bobby, which I'm still skeptical is going to happen. I guess he could always win if he beats Bobby, but I think that'd be worst case scenario. I still think Brock's going to win. I don't really want him to win, but it makes sense, so it is what it is, I suppose. But yeah, he says it's a wide open field this year for the men. Anyone can really win it. He's biased specifically towards Matt Riddle and Damian Priest because of the NXT connection, and you kind of saw them come up in the NXT ranks. But he also wants to see someone new break out in either match as well. For the women, he calls it a high bar. The women have a high bar. There's a lot of great talent in that match. There's a lot of great female talent in WWE right now. So he's looking forward to that as well. To kind of close out here, they recap Damian Priest versus Kevin Owens. That saw Damian Priest get himself disqualified against Kevin. Dumb disqualification finish they've done with Damian many times before. We hear very briefly backstage from Kevin Owens with Kevin Patrick. They have great chemistry. Kevin says that he didn't like Damian coming out in their match on Monday. He liked the Priest part of him, doesn't like the Damian part. He made a Festivus reference, and he also dodged the Royal Rumble question that Kevin asked about. Oh, who are you looking forward to, or what's your game plan going to the match or whatever? He completely avoided it and then walked off and then stared a hole through Kevin Patrick, which was great. To close out the show, back in the studio, Matt Camp and Jackie Redmond ran down the Rumble card for Saturday, and that was it. So, decent episode of Raw Talk this week, a bit better than usual. Kevin and Kevin, yeah, the two Kevins are great. Kevin Patrick and Kevin Owens. Love the chemistry there. The Mysterios didn't really say anything of note, but it was fine. And Bianca was good in her short interview as well. Great hearing from and seeing Shawn Michaels on this show. Again, we don't really see him often, especially backstage at NXT now. I thought he was a great face to have for Raw Talk, and hopefully we get to hear more from him often, more often in the future. And he wasn't just on, he was probably just on because he's a 2-time Royal Rumble winner. But I would love to see him more often on the show, and it kind of switches things up from the typical Jerry Lawler takes and the Booker T takes that really don't mean anything. It's not that Shawn Michaels' analysis is like 20 times more meaningful, but personally, I would rather hear Shawn Michaels talk about the Royal Rumble than Booker T and Jerry talk about whatever the fuck they do whenever they come on the show. But decent episode of Raw Talk this week. Thank you guys for checking out my review. I appreciate it. Be sure to like the video, drop a comment, share the video, and subscribe to the channel for more daily content. Also, be sure to check out my exclusive interview with Sheamus, SmackDown Superstar, in video form from yesterday here on the channel. Also went up in article form over on dailyddt.com. It's available right now in video form here on the channel. So hit that bell button to be notified every time a new video goes up if you haven't already. Have a great one, guys. Enjoy the Royal Rumble this weekend. I'm Graham G.S. Matthews, and I'll catch your ass down the road.